Hello and welcome to WION live broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani. First, let's take a look at the top stories making headlines this hour. IMF slightly lowers 2023 global growth forecast to 2.8%. Europe avoids recession to growth at 0.8%. China, however, maintains 5.2% growth. UN Chief Antonio Guterres sounds alarm over Somalia's armed conflict and climate disaster. On a visit to Somalia, Guterres appeals of massive international support to counter drought and the Islamist insurgency. Belfast high security ahead of the arrival of U.S. President Joe Biden to mark the 25th anniversary of the signing of the Good Friday peace agreement. Violent protests over the deal have hit the region over the last 24 hours. Red Cross warning issued for flights after Russia's Shai-Vulutch volcano erupts, spewing ash across the far eastern Kamchatka Peninsula. Air crews told to constantly monitor MET information. Twitter's ad revenue to drop 23% in 2023, says closely watched forecasters. Insider intelligence revenue estimates to fall to $2.98 billion from the earlier $4.74 billion. Brazil President Lula da Silva will be in China from Tuesday to Friday this week. Beyond bilateral relations, the top focus of this visit is expected to be trade investment cooperation as well under China's Belt and Road Initiative. The meeting will also talk about joint mediation efforts over the Ukraine crisis. Brazilian officials have said the main goal of the visit is to diversify the country's trade relations with China. Beijing is Brazil's largest consumer for its exports, which mainly consists of soybeans and iron ore. More than 20 deals are expected to be signed, covering areas such as health, agriculture, education, finance, industry, science, and technology. Extend that to the currency for trade. A China-Brazil deal announced last month said trade between the two sides will be settled in their own currencies. With this, the two nations dished the U.S. dollar as an intermediary. Brazil has already begun to accept trade settlements and investments in the yuan. At the upcoming meeting, the two nations are expected to increase their efforts to de-dollarize their economies. Xi and Lula are expected to discuss the war in Ukraine in the wake of the Chinese president's Moscow visit last month. Lula has repeatedly expressed his willingness to serve as a mediator. According to a Financial Times report, the Brazilian president will propose, quote, a peace club with China to mediate an end to the war in Ukraine. President Lula's idea of a peace club is expected to bring more neutral countries to cooperate on mediation. While Lula's China trip, Brazil is expected to formally join China's Belt and Road Initiative. If an agreement for the same is inked, there will be 22 Latin American countries formally in the China proposed initiative. Back in 2022, Argentina signed a memorandum of understanding on cooperation within the framework of the Belt and Road Initiative. If Brazil joins the initiative this time, it means that the BRI has effectively covered the major parts of South American countries. Okay, for more on this, we are joined by Elizabeth Loris. She's joining us live from Washington, D.C. She is an adjunct fellow in Pacific Forum and president of E. Loris Consulting. Elizabeth, welcome back to WION. A South American nation in the immediate vicinity of the United States has agreed to move out of the dollar regime, so to say, to trade with China. Is the power of the dollar slipping?
We have seen some slippage. I'm a bit skeptical that it is slipping very much. If you just want to talk about the Brazilian case, although Brazil's major trading partner is China, and they have agreed to engage in trade by yuan, 80% of Brazil's foreign currency is still US dollars. And worldwide, around 55% of global savings and foreign currency is in US dollars. Now, that is down from around 69% about 15 years ago. But we see some slippage, but that slippage is very slow. What's going on in the Brazilian case is actually two things. It's the value of the dollar. The dollar is very strong now. That is, relative to other currencies worldwide, it has appreciated. So it is expensive to buy. When China and Brazil do trade, if they do trade in US dollars, they have to use their own currencies to buy US dollars and then exchange. So that is expensive because their currencies relative to the US dollar are weak. So they have to buy expensive US dollars in which to do trade. So they're saying, let's cut out that third party, which is the US dollar, and just use the yuan. The other issue going on is US and foreign sanctions against Russia and other countries that support Russia, I should say perhaps other entities and maybe other countries that support Russia in its war against Ukraine. Those sanctions have frozen Russian assets in banks and makes it difficult to move the Russian ruble around. And so Xi Jinping in China and other authoritarian leaders are seeing this and saying, this could come to us. So if we want to be able to move our own currencies around, we cannot be trading them for US dollars. Let's create a system where other countries perhaps adopt the yuan, and so we can trade amongst each other.
Also on the agenda is possible peace mediations between Ukraine and Russia after France. Brazil is now cozying up to China as peacemaker in that war. What does this mean for America's position in the world?
I don't see Brazil's participation in any type of mediation regarding Ukraine a threat to the United States. Brazil has never been a big player in international relations. One area that Brazil has some power, perhaps, is as a major party in the BRICS. That is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and at some point it was South Africa, perhaps. That is where Brazil might have some influence. You know, the BRICS created the new development bank as a bank to be an alternative to the Western-dominated, as Washington-dominated IMF and World Bank. And interestingly, on April 14th, former Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff, remember, she was vice president to Lula, and then she was president. She is going to be inaugurated as the head of that new development bank. So I see Brazil having more influence there. That is in regarding financial transactions, trade, development, as you mentioned, BRI in Latin America, much more than being any realistic mediating party in the Russia-Ukraine war.
Elizabeth Loris, thank you so much for that insight, and we look forward to speaking to you again from Washington, D.C. very soon.
You're welcome.
The UN has announced that it is reconsidering operations in Afghanistan after the Taliban government banned women from working for the organization. The UN assistant mission in Afghanistan has issued a statement condemning the Taliban regime and is threatening to pull out of Afghanistan altogether if female employees are not allowed to return to work. The organization has ordered 3,300 of its Afghan staff, both men and women, to stay home until after the 5th of May. On the 4th of April, the Taliban regime ordered all Afghan women to stop working for the mission across the country. This is in clear violation of the organization's charter. The move is part of a larger policy by the Taliban to restrict women's access to work, education, as well as public life. The UN mission has initiated an operation review to decide if it should stay or leave the nation.
A new escalation, if you wish, of the actions which have taken already a cruel and I would say a devastating blow against Afghan women, which will further undermine our collective ability of the entire community to support the population, and which is experiencing unprecedented humanitarian crisis. And that crisis is largely centered around women and girls who are the most vulnerable, and they're all taking sides.
In December of last year, the Taliban banned women from working for NGOs across the country, leaving aid workers unable to assist women and children. The restrictions did not apply to the United Nations initially. It remained unclear if the same policy would be pushed forth to foreign embassies also still in Afghanistan. The Taliban has also banned women and families from open space in Afghanistan in the Herat province. The ban comes in the wake of a complaint filed by Islamic clerics about intermixing genders in public space.
که در حقیقت فرق بوده، نام رستوران بوده، بعض خلط و تخلط در بین مرد و زن بوده. اینها را الحمدلله اصلاح شده علی و همچون تمامی جاهای سیاحتی که مرد و زن هم میره در این شهر محتسبین میگرده، تعقیبش داره.
The Taliban has attempted to create female-exclusive spaces in Herat. Last month, the local government set up 2 shopping centers exclusively for female shoppers and shopkeepers. While men are banned from entering the premise, male relatives are allowed to visit female-run businesses in both centers. The local government has waived rent for the first 6 months. However, due to the economic crisis plaguing Afghanistan, along with its draconian policies on women, the footfall has been low.
کمی مشکلاتی هست، مخصوصا در قسمت اقتصاد. از لحاظ اقتصادی مردم افغانستان زمانی که خانم ها در ادارات کار نکنن، در مؤسسات کار نکنن یا که سواد نداشته باشن، اینا نمیتونن درست کار پیش ببرن. به او خاطری باعث میشه که روز به روز اقتصاد ضعیف بشه و وقتی که اقتصاد ضعیف میشه و مردم دیگه بودجه برای خرید و فروش هم ندارن، برای کار هم حتی ندارن و نمیتونن، حتی خانم هایی که در بخشای تجارت کار میکنن اینا نمیتونن که تجارت خود پیش ببرن.
In Nashville, Tennessee, ousted lawmaker Justin Jones was reinstated to the State House of Representatives. Jones, along with another legislator, staged a gun control protest on the House floor last week, prompting their expulsion. Justin Jones returned to the State House, raising his fist in solidarity and declaring power to the people. The Tennessee representative had been ousted by Republican lawmakers after he violated a quorum and joined a gun control protest on the House floor while it was in session. Protesters have stormed the Capitol building in the wake of the Nashville school shooting that claimed the life of 3 adults and 3 children. Justin Jones's expulsion caused outrage among Democrats, prompting federal Democrat lawmakers to seek to advance gun control laws in a Republican-held House. It was the Metropolitan Council of Nashville and Davidson County who voted 36-0 on Monday to make Jones the interim representative after his expulsion. He's 27 years old. Jones was elected to the state legislature last year.
particularly the young people. Thank you for reminding us that the struggle for justice is fought and won in every generation. And so the people of Tennessee, I stand with you. We will continue to be your voice here, and no expulsion, no attempt to silence us will stop us, but it will only galvanize and strengthen our movement. And we continue to show up in the people's house. Power to the people.
The Covenant School shooting is one of the 146 mass shootings that took place in the United States this year alone. This is the highest number of gun violence incidents since 2016. The motives of the shooter have not been made public yet.
I believe that kids are more important than guns. It's unbelievably interesting the way that defenders of the Second Amendment cry about tyranny and cry about government overreach, and then that is exactly what's been happening in this building.
Meanwhile, 4 bank workers were shot to death by a colleague on Monday in Louisville, Kentucky. Earnings season is just around the corner. How have your favorite companies performed in the last quarter, and what can you expect from them going forward? Well, here's a report that should help you decode that very question. First, it was the mass layoffs, and now it's the decline of profits. It has been a tough 2023 for corporate America. A Wall Street analysis shows that earnings in the first quarter, that is from January to March 2023, are likely to decline by 6.8% compared to the same period in 2022, as inflation pinches the pockets of the common man. Reports suggest that the decline in profit is the worst since the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic, when earnings had dipped by 30%. While inflation remains high in the United States, the fear of a recession this year does not bode well for U.S. multinationals. An analysis by FactSet shows that companies in the consumer service, IT, healthcare are also likely to see negative earnings per share. Earnings per share is the way to know if a company is profitable or not. However, there is a glimmer of hope as well. Many of us are fond of free charging stations, be it in cafes, at airports, or at other public spaces. Unfortunately, it's not a good idea to use these charging outlets. Why? Well, because crooks can manage to hijack public chargers, and compromised chargers can infect your device with malware and steal data. In other words, if you use a public charger that is infected with a malicious software, hackers can steal your password, bank details, and other confidential data. This practice of using public chargers to infect phones and other devices with malware is called juice jacking. In fact, the Federal Bureau of Investigations has now warned consumers in the U.S. about such cybersecurity risks. The FBI says consumers should avoid using public chargers at malls and airports. They should instead stick to their own USB cables and charger plugs. This isn't the first time we've heard official government organizations warn about such hacking methods, but it seems that such warnings at regular intervals are required to keep people alert. We say the best way to avoid such crime is by not using public USB outlets altogether. If you need to charge your device, plug it directly into a traditional outlet using your own wall adapter or using a portable power bank. Hundreds of South Koreans were forced to flee a wildfire fueled by strong winds that burned parts of an eastern coastal city, destroying dozens of homes. More than 700 firefighters and 300 vehicles were dispatched to fight the fire that started on a mountain in central part of Gangneung. At least 44 homes were destroyed and more than 300 residents evacuated to facilities that included an ice skating arena and a middle school gym. There were no immediate reports of injuries or deaths, and it wasn't immediately clear how long it would take firefighters to bring the flames under control, as high winds made it difficult to deploy aircrafts. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol instructed officials to deploy, quote, all available equipment and personnel to swiftly extinguish the wildfire as evacuated residents in a bid to prevent the loss of life. On to the world of sports. The NBA postseason is here, and LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers will face the Minnesota Timberwolves, with the winners stealing a spot in the playoffs. The Lakers finished the regular season as one of the most informed teams in the league. They finished with 9 wins out of their last 11 games and only just missed out to champion Golden State Warriors for the last automatic spot for the playoffs. However, a 7th place finish looked extremely unlikely a couple of months back, and the Lakers will be satisfied that they are 1 win away from the playoffs. A 38-year-old LeBron James usually peaks in the postseason, and if the 4-time NBA champion and Anthony Davis can hit their stride, no team will want to face the Lakers. But not to underestimate the Timberwolves. Minnesota is led by all-star Anthony Edwards, but will be without 3-time Defense Player of the Year Rudy Gobert, who was suspended after punching teammate Kyle Anderson during last week's clash against the New Orleans Pelicans. The 8th-seeded Wolves also have a 2-1 head-to-head lead over the Lakers this season. The winner of the clash will face the Memphis Grizzlies in the first round. All right, let's get you a recap on how exactly the play-in tournament works. The 2 final playoff spots will be decided this week. The 7th and 8th seeds in each conference will have 2 shots at progressing, with the winner going straight through. The 9th and 10th place teams will first face off in an eliminator and then take on the losing team from the 7th and 8th match in what is a straight shootout. Over in the Eastern Conference, the Miami Heat face the Atlanta Hawks in the qualifier. They say if you want someone to love you forever, buy a dog, feed it, and keep it around. This quote is so apt for National Pet Day, which falls today. While the world celebrates with their paw-fecked friends, we introduce you to the world's shortest dog. Meet Pearl, a 2-year-old female Chihuahua. Pearl was named as the world's shortest living dog by the Guinness World Records. Born on September 1st, 2020, Pearl measures a mere 3.59 inches in height and 5 inches in length. That means she is shorter than a popsicle and a TV remote. She's almost the same length as a $1 bill. It is interesting to note that Pearl is the relative of Miracle Millie, a Chihuahua who previously held the world record for being the world's smallest dog. Like Millie, Pearl 2 was just 28 grams at birth. Pearl was recently unveiled to the world in Milan on the set of a talent show. Her owner brought her onto the stage in an Easter egg-shaped seat. According to her owner, Pearl has a very calm temperament, which is very unusual for a Chihuahua. She likes eating high-quality food like chicken and salmon. Thank you so much for staying with us and watching WION Live broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani. I'll see you tomorrow. Meanwhile, don't go away. More news and headlines coming up next, only on WION World is One. There are many other